Commander Zethkar stood before the massive holographic display in the command center of the Hegemony flagship, Times Dominion's Edge ***. The blue glow of star charts filled the room as dozens of his officers worked at their stations. Everything looked normal, but Zethkar felt uneasy. Something was wrong with this sector of space. "Commander," called out Navigation Officer Yilnara from her console. "We're detecting unusual energy signatures from the third planet in this system. The locals call it Earth." Zethkar's 4 eyes focused on the small blue and green world displayed on the main screen. For 3 cycles, the galactic hegemony had been expanding into this region of space. They had conquered 17 civilizations without any real resistance. Most species either surrendered immediately or fell within days of first contact. The humans should be no different. "What kind of energy signatures?" Zethkar asked, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had crushed a dozen worlds. Yilnara's tentacles danced over her controls as she analyzed the data. "It appears to be weapons testing, sir. Primitive fusion-based devices. Nothing that could threaten our shields." The other officers in the command center let out low chuckles. Primitive fusion weapons against hegemony technology was like throwing rocks at a mountain. Their ships were protected by quantum barriers that could absorb the full energy output of a star. Their plasma cannons could turn entire continents into glass. "What could one small world possibly do?" "Sir," interrupted communications specialist Mordun, from the far side of the room. "I'm receiving a transmission from the archive world. It's marked as urgent and classified at the highest level." Zethkar frowned. The archive world was where the hegemony kept all records of their 1,000-year history. They rarely sent communications, unless something was critically important. "Put it through to my personal chamber. I'll review it privately." In his quarters, Zethkar activated his personal communication array. The image of Archkeeper Velthar appeared before him. The ancient being's skin was pale with age, and his 6 arms trembled slightly as he spoke. "Commander Zethkar, you must abort your mission immediately. I have been reviewing the oldest records in our archives, documents that date back to the time of the ancients. There are warnings about the species you are approaching." Zethkar leaned back in his chair. The ancients had disappeared millions of years ago, leaving behind only ruins and scattered records. Most of the hegemony considered their warnings to be nothing more than mythology. "Archkeeper, with respect, we are dealing with a primitive world that has barely achieved spaceflight. What could possibly threaten the most powerful military force in the galaxy?" Velthar's image flickered as he accessed ancient files. "The warnings are specific, Commander. They speak of a species called humans who inhabit the third world of a yellow star. The ancients describe them as unpredictable, dangerous in ways that cannot be measured by technology alone." The old keeper's voice grew more urgent. "Commander, the ancients were the most advanced civilization ever known. They created technologies we still cannot understand. If they feared these humans enough to leave warnings, perhaps we should listen." Zethkar stood and walked to the viewport of his quarters. Below, he could see Earth hanging in the void like a small jewel. It looked so peaceful, so defenseless. "Archkeeper, I appreciate your concern, but I have my orders. I will not return empty-handed because of ancient superstitions." "Commander, please," Velthar began. But Zethkar ended the transmission. Back in the command center, preparations for invasion continued. The hegemony fleet consisted of 200 warships, each one capable of destroying a planet's surface. They had sensors that could detect life signs from orbit, weapons that could strike with surgical precision, and shields that had never been breached in 1,000 years of conquest. "Tactical Officer Krendar, what is your assessment of the human military capabilities?" Zethkar asked. Krendar's scales shifted color as he accessed the scan data. "Primitive, sir. They use chemical propulsion for space travel, and metal projectiles for weapons. Their largest military vehicles are powered by fossil fuel combustion. Based on our scans, their most advanced weapons could not penetrate the armor of our smallest scout ship. Population centers, scattered across all continents, approximately 8 billion individuals. Their cities are densely packed and poorly defended. A standard bombardment pattern would eliminate organized resistance within hours." Zethkar nodded with satisfaction. This would be another easy conquest for the hegemony. The humans would either surrender immediately or be crushed so quickly that resistance would be meaningless. Open communication channels to Earth, he commanded. Let's give them a chance to surrender before we demonstrate our superiority. The main screen changed to show a transmission being sent toward Earth. Within minutes, a response came back. The image that appeared showed a human female in what appeared to be some kind of official chamber. Behind her stood several other humans, all looking calm despite facing first contact with an alien civilization. "I am Secretary General Chen of the United Nations of Earth," the woman said in a clear, steady voice. "We have received your communication demanding our surrender. We must respectfully decline." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the hegemony command center. No species had ever refused their initial offer of surrender. Most civilizations begged for mercy within minutes of seeing hegemony ships appear in their sky. Zethkar activated the response channel. "I am Commander Zethkar of the Galactic Hegemony. You cannot seriously expect to resist us. Our technology is thousands of years more advanced than yours. Your weapons cannot harm us, and our weapons can destroy your entire civilization. I am offering you one final chance to avoid unnecessary destruction." Secretary General Chen looked directly into the camera. "Commander, we understand that you possess superior technology. However, we also know that sometimes the strongest force doesn't always win. We choose to defend our world, regardless of the odds." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Zethkar had never encountered such defiance from a clearly outmatched opponent. Most species recognized the futility of resistance and chose to preserve their lives rather than fight impossible battles. "Sir," said Tactical Officer Krendar, "shall we begin bombardment of their population centers?" Zethkar considered his options. A quick demonstration of superior firepower usually convinced stubborn species to reconsider their position. Target their largest population center and prepare a precision strike. Nothing that will cause permanent damage, just enough to show them what we're capable of. "Weapons locked on target, sir." "Shall I fire?" Before Zethkar could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed as officers scrambled to their emergency stations. "Commander," shouted the sensor operator, "I'm detecting multiple launches from the planet's surface. They appear to be some kind of guided projectiles. On the main screen, dozens of white trails could be seen rising from Earth's surface toward the hegemony fleet." Zethkar laughed. Even if the humans had somehow developed rocket technology, their primitive weapons could never penetrate hegemony shields. "Maintain position," he ordered calmly. "Let them waste their ammunition against our barriers. It will make their eventual surrender more meaningful when they realize how hopeless their situation truly is." The first wave of human missiles reached the fleet within minutes. As expected, they exploded harmlessly against the quantum barriers surrounding each ship. The light show was impressive, but no damage was done. Several officers in the command center chuckled at the humans' futile gesture. "Sir, the humans are transmitting again," announced communications specialist Mordoon. "Put it through," Zethkar said, expecting to receive a surrender offer. Secretary General Chen appeared on screen again, but this time she was in what looked like an underground command center. Her expression remained calm and determined. "Commander Zethkar, we hope you noticed that our weapons reached your ships exactly when and where we intended them to. The fact that they caused no damage was expected. We were simply calibrating our targeting systems." Zethkar frowned. What was the human trying to say? Their weapons had been completely ineffective. "The missiles you just witnessed were deliberately designed to be harmless," Chen continued. "We wanted to prove that we could hit you before we used weapons that would actually cause damage. We also wanted to give you one final opportunity to reconsider your intentions toward our world." "Impossible," muttered Tactical Officer Krendar. "Their technology cannot threaten us." Secretary General Chen seemed to hear his comment through the open communication channel. "You're correct that our technology alone cannot match yours. However, human history has taught us that victory often goes to whoever is willing to pay the highest price. We're prepared to pay any price to defend our freedom." The transmission ended again, leaving Zethkar more puzzled than concerned. The humans were clearly brave, but bravery alone could not overcome the laws of physics. Their weapons simply could not harm hegemony ships. "Commander," called sensor operator Valesh from her station. "I'm detecting unusual activity on Earth's surface. Energy signatures are spiking across multiple continents." "What kind of energy signatures?" "I'm not sure, sir. They don't match anything in our database. The readings are strange. It's as if they're deliberately trying to confuse our sensors." Zethkar studied the data flowing across his personal display. The humans were clearly up to something, but he couldn't imagine what they thought they could accomplish against superior alien technology. "Maintain full alert status," he ordered. "I want continuous scans of Earth's surface. The moment they launch anything else, I want to know about it immediately." Hours passed without any additional activity from Earth. The hegemony fleet remained in position, waiting for the humans to either surrender or attempt another futile attack. Zethkar used the time to review tactical reports and plan the occupation of Earth once the humans finally accepted reality. As the ship's day cycle reached its end, Zethkar retired to his quarters for rest. Tomorrow, he would begin systematic bombardment of human population centers until they agreed to surrender. He had given them more chances than any previous species. Their stubbornness was admirable in a way, but ultimately, it would only lead to greater suffering for their civilization. In his personal chambers, Zethkar activated his communication array one more time to review the message from Archkeeper Velthar. The old keeper had seemed genuinely frightened by the ancient warnings about humans. Perhaps it would be wise to review those records himself before proceeding. The archives contained thousands of documents left behind by the ancients. Most were technical specifications for technologies the hegemony still could not understand. Others described their encounters with various species throughout the galaxy. Zethkar searched for any references to humans or Earth. After several hours of searching, he found what he was looking for. The document was badly corrupted, but several passages were still readable. The species that calls itself human possesses capabilities that cannot be measured through conventional analysis. Their technology is primitive by our standards, yet they have achieved victories against forces that should have overwhelmed them completely. We recommend extreme caution when dealing with this species. Another section read, "Humans demonstrate an unusual capacity for innovation under extreme pressure. When faced with impossible odds, they frequently discover solutions that our calculations suggest should not exist. Their psychological makeup appears fundamentally different from other intelligent species." The most disturbing passage was near the end. "We strongly advise that no civilization attempt to conquer or subjugate the human homeworld. The cost of victory, if victory is even possible, would exceed any potential benefit. Some opponents are best left undisturbed." Zethkar closed the archive files and stared out at the stars. The ancients had been wrong about many things over the millennia. Their technology was impressive, but their understanding of military strategy was questionable. How could any primitive species pose a real threat to advanced aliens? As he prepared for sleep, Zethkar made his final decision. Tomorrow, he would give the humans one last chance to surrender. If they refused again, he would demonstrate exactly what hegemony plasma cannons could do to a planet's surface. Whatever the ancients had feared about humans, it couldn't possibly compare to the firepower of 200 modern warships. Outside his viewport, Earth continued its silent orbit around its yellow star. On the surface below, 8 billion humans prepared for the most important battle in their species' history. They knew the odds against them were impossible. They knew their technology was inferior. They knew they were facing an enemy that had never been defeated. But they also knew something that the hegemony had never learned about humanity. Sometimes, the most dangerous opponent is the one with nothing left to lose. In hidden facilities across Earth's surface, human scientists and military leaders worked through the night on preparations that would have seemed impossible to any outside observer. They were about to demonstrate why the ancients had left warnings that stretched across millions of years. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when someone ignored ancient wisdom about humanity. Dawn broke over Earth as Commander Zethkar returned to the command center of the Times Dominion's Edge, *. His sleep had been troubled by dreams of ancient warnings and impossible scenarios. The rational part of his mind dismissed these concerns, but something deep in his military instincts suggested caution. "Report," he commanded as he took his position at the central command console. "All ships maintaining position, sir," replied Navigation Officer Yil Nara. "Earth shows continued unusual energy activity, but no additional launches have been detected." Zethkar studied the tactical display. 200 hegemony warships formed a perfect blockade formation around Earth. Each ship bristled with enough firepower to level a continent. The humans had nowhere to run, and no allies to call for help. By all logical analysis, this should have ended yesterday. "Open communication channels to Earth," he ordered. "I'll give them one final opportunity to avoid unnecessary bloodshed." Open communication channels to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. Within moments, Secretary General Chen appeared on the main screen. She looked tired but resolute, standing in what appeared to be the same underground command center. Behind her, human technicians worked at primitive computer terminals. "Commander Zethkar," she said before he could speak, "we've been expecting your call. I assume you're ready to discuss terms for your withdrawal from our solar system." Stunned silence filled the Hegemony Command Center. Several officers actually stepped back from their stations in shock. No species in 1,000 years had suggested that the Hegemony should withdraw from anything. Zethkar's voice carried barely controlled anger when he responded. "Secretary General Chen, I believe you misunderstand your situation. You have no weapons that can harm us, no allies who can assist you, and no escape routes available. I am offering you one final chance to surrender before I demonstrate the consequences of defying the galactic hegemony." Chen's expression didn't change. "Commander, you're correct that we cannot match your technology. However, there are some things more important than survival. We've made our choice. The question now is whether you're prepared for what that choice means." "What could it possibly mean?" Zethkar snapped. "You're a primitive species facing the most advanced military force in the galaxy. Your bravery is admirable, but ultimately meaningless." "Perhaps," Chen replied calmly. "But before you begin your attack, we'd like to show you something. We've prepared a demonstration of our own. Please observe your sensors carefully over the next few minutes." The transmission ended, leaving the Hegemony Command Center in tense silence. Zethkar turned to his tactical officer. "Krendar, what are they doing down there?" "Sir, I'm detecting massive energy buildups across all continents. It appears to be some kind of coordinated activation sequence, but I can't identify the technology involved. On Earth's surface, hidden installations that had been built in secret over the past several decades began powering up simultaneously. In underground facilities beneath major cities, in remote mountain complexes, and in installations hidden beneath the ocean floor, human engineers initiated sequences they had hoped never to use. "Commander," shouted sensor operator Valesh, "I'm detecting quantum fluctuations in space around our fleet. The readings don't make sense. It's as if space itself is becoming unstable." Zethkar felt his first real moment of concern since arriving at Earth. Quantum fluctuations were phenomena associated with the most advanced ancient technologies. Primitive civilizations shouldn't even know such things existed, much less be able to generate them. "Analysis," he barked. "Working, sir," Valesh replied, her tentacles flying over her controls. "The fluctuations appear to be artificial in nature. They're emanating from multiple points on Earth's surface and growing stronger by the minute." Across the fleet, alarm systems began activating on various ships. The quantum barriers protecting the hegemony vessels were designed to defend against conventional weapons, plasma attacks, and even exotic particle beams. They were not designed to handle fundamental alterations to the structure of space-time itself. "Commander," called Communications Specialist Mordun, "we're receiving another transmission from Earth." "Put it through." This time, the image showed a different human. He appeared to be elderly, with white hair and wearing what looked like a simple laboratory coat. Behind him stood several other humans in similar attire, working at complex control panels. "I am Dr. Harrison Webb, director of Earth's Defensive Research Initiative, the man said in a calm, academic tone. I suspect your sensors are detecting some unusual readings about now. Before we proceed further, I'd like to explain what's happening. Zethkar leaned forward in his command chair. Explain what? Exactly, Dr. Webb smiled slightly. Commander, humanity has been aware of the existence of alien life for much longer than you might expect. We've been monitoring galactic communications for over 50 years. We know about the hegemony's expansion, their methods, and their technology. The human scientist gestured to something off-screen. We also know about the ancients and their warnings about our species. Unlike you, we've taken those warnings seriously. We've spent decades trying to understand what they meant and how we could use that knowledge to defend ourselves. Impossible, muttered Tactical Officer Krendar. Primitive species cannot develop quantum manipulation technology. Dr. Webb seemed to hear the comment. You're absolutely correct, Officer Krendar. We cannot develop such technology through normal research. However, we can steal it. A chill ran down Zethkar's spine. What do you mean, Commander? Your fleet has been scanning our planet for days, analyzing our technology and mapping our defenses. What you may not have realized is that we've been scanning you as well. Every sensor beam you've directed at Earth has been carefully analyzed and reverse-engineered. Dr. Webb turned to one of his technicians, who nodded and activated additional controls. You see, humans have one particular talent that most other species lack. We're extremely good at taking things apart and figuring out how they work. Even when we don't understand the underlying principles, we can often copy the effects. On the tactical display, the quantum fluctuations around the hegemony fleet suddenly intensified. Several ships reported minor system failures as their quantum barriers began resonating in unexpected ways. What we've done, Dr. Webb continued, is create a crude but effective copy of your quantum barrier technology. We can't build starships or plasma weapons, but we can generate quantum fields. The question is, what happens when two quantum fields of different frequencies interact with each other? Science Officer Pelnath looked up from her station with growing alarm. Commander, if they're generating quantum interference patterns, they could destabilize our entire defensive grid. Our shields aren't designed to handle this kind of interaction. Zethkar felt his confidence beginning to crack. How is this possible? You've had access to our scanner emissions for less than a week. Dr. Webb's expression became more serious. Commander, I think you underestimate what humans can accomplish when our survival is at stake. We've had teams of our best scientists working around the clock for days. We've built quantum field generators using salvaged particle accelerator components, superconducting magnets from our transportation systems, and processing cores from our most advanced computers. Another human joined Dr. Webb on screen, this one wearing a military uniform covered with insignia. I'm General Martinez, Commanding Officer of Earth's Unified Defense Forces. Dr. Webb has explained the technical aspects of our response. I'm here to discuss the strategic implications. General Martinez looked directly into the camera. Commander Zethkar, we know we cannot win a conventional battle against your fleet. However, we can make victory so costly that you might prefer to find easier targets elsewhere. What do you mean? Zethkar asked, though he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to know the answer. Our quantum field generators are currently destabilizing the space around your fleet, General Martinez explained. We can increase that instability to the point where your ship's quantum barriers will collapse entirely. Without those barriers, your vessels will be vulnerable to our conventional weapons. Tactical Officer Krendar worked frantically at his station. Sir, he's correct. If they continue increasing the quantum interference, our shields will fail within hours. Without shields, even their primitive missiles could potentially cause damage. General Martinez continued his explanation. However, destabilizing quantum fields in this region of space will have other consequences. The quantum cascade could affect Earth's orbit, potentially making our planet uninhabitable. We're prepared to accept that price, to prevent you from enslaving our species. The words hit Zethkar like a physical blow. The humans weren't just threatening to fight back. They were threatening to destroy their own world, rather than surrender. In 1,000 years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this level of determination. "You're bluffing," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Dr. Webb returned to the screen. "Commander, let me show you something that might help you understand our perspective." The transmission shifted to show images from Earth's surface. Massive crowds had gathered in cities around the world. Instead of panic or despair, the faces showed determination and unity. Children held signs supporting their defenders. Elderly people volunteered to help in any way they could. Entire populations had come together in support of the impossible fight against alien invasion. "These are our people," General Martinez said as the images continued. "Every person on this planet has voted to support our resistance. They understand the risks. They know we might all die. But they prefer death to slavery." Secretary General Chen reappeared on screen. "Commander Zethkar, this is what the ancients tried to warn you about. It's not our technology that makes humans dangerous. It's our willingness to sacrifice everything for the principles we believe in. We cannot be conquered because we will not allow ourselves to be conquered." Zethkar looked around his command center. His officers were staring at him, waiting for orders. 200 of the most powerful warships ever built surrounded one small planet. But for the first time in his military career, he wasn't certain of victory. "Sir," reported Science Officer Pelnath, "quantum instability is continuing to increase. At current rates, we'll lose shield integrity in approximately 6 hours. Can we withdraw to a safe distance and bombard them from beyond their quantum field range?" "Negative, sir. Once the quantum cascade begins, it will continue expanding until it exhausts its energy source. If we retreat, we'll be chased by an expanding bubble of unstable space. Our only options are to destroy their generators immediately or withdraw completely from this solar system." Zethkar studied the tactical display showing Earth and the surrounding space. The quantum fields were invisible to normal sensors, but his instruments could track their effects. The humans had created a trap that endangered both their own world and his fleet. It was the most insane defensive strategy he had ever encountered. "Open a channel to Earth," he commanded. Secretary General Chen appeared again, still looking calm and resolute. "Yes, Commander? You're asking me to believe that you're willing to destroy your entire civilization, rather than accept hegemony rule. That you've built weapons that will kill everyone on your planet just to prevent us from conquering you." "That's correct," Chen replied without hesitation. "Why?" "The hegemony offers conquered species protection, prosperity, and a place in galactic civilization. We're not monsters. We don't destroy cultures or eliminate populations. We simply provide order and stability throughout the galaxy." For the first time since the conversation began, Chen's expression showed emotion. Anger flashed in her eyes as she leaned toward the camera. "Commander, you offer us slavery dressed up as civilization. You would take away our freedom to govern ourselves, our right to make our own decisions, our ability to determine our own future. You offer us comfort in exchange for independence. We refuse that bargain." She stood straighter, her voice growing stronger. "Humanity has fought this battle before, against our own species. We've faced empires that offered peace through submission, safety through surrender of freedom. Every time, some of us have chosen to fight regardless of the odds. Every time. That choice has made the difference between slavery and liberty." General Martinez joined her on screen. "Commander, we've studied your previous conquests. 17 civilizations that chose safety over freedom. 17 species that now exist only as servants to your empire. We will not become number 18. The transmission ended, leaving Zethkar alone with the most difficult decision of his military career. He could order immediate bombardment of Earth's quantum field generators. His weapons were powerful enough to destroy the installations before the cascade effect reached critical levels. But doing so would require targeting civilian population centers where the generators were hidden. The human death toll would be enormous. Alternatively, he could retreat and report back to the Hegemony Council. But returning empty-handed after a confrontation with a primitive species would end his career and possibly result in his execution for cowardice. "Commander," called Navigation Officer Yilnara from her station, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Hegemony Council." Zethkar's heart sank. The Council must have been monitoring the situation. They would demand explanations for the delay and expect immediate results regardless of circumstances. "Put it through to my private chamber," he said reluctantly. The image that appeared was Supreme Counselor Vex's Tharn, the most powerful individual in the galactic hegemony. His crystalline features showed no emotion, but his voice carried absolute authority. "Commander Zethkar, explain why you have not yet completed the conquest of this primitive world." Zethkar straightened in his chair. "Supreme Counselor, the situation is more complex than initial intelligence suggested. The humans have developed unexpected defensive capabilities that pose a significant threat to fleet safety. Impossible. Our intelligence clearly indicates that this species possesses only primitive technology. What could they possibly do to threaten hegemony warships?" Sir, they have somehow created quantum field generators that are destabilizing space around our fleet. If the process continues, we will lose shield integrity. They claim they're willing to destroy their own planet, rather than surrender. Supreme Counselor Vex Tharn's image flickered as he accessed files from his location. "Commander, I have reviewed the ancient records that Archkeeper Velthar transmitted to us. The warnings about this species are extensive. Perhaps we should consider alternative approaches." Zethkar blinked in surprise. He had expected anger and demands for immediate action. "Sir, Commander, the ancients left very specific warnings about attempting to conquer the human homeworld. They described this species as possessing capabilities that could not be measured through conventional analysis. Based on your current situation, it appears those warnings were accurate." The Supreme Counselor leaned forward in his transmission. "Commander Zethkar, you are hereby authorized to withdraw from this system if you determine that conquest would result in unacceptable casualties to hegemony forces." "Sir, are you suggesting we retreat from a primitive species?" "Commander, I am suggesting that we follow the wisdom of our predecessors. The ancients warned us to leave this species alone. Perhaps we should listen to that advice." The transmission ended, leaving Zethkar staring at the blank screen. For the first time in hegemony history, the Council was suggesting retreat from a technologically inferior opponent. The implications were staggering. Around him, alarms continued to sound as quantum instability increased throughout the fleet. On Earth below, 8 billion humans waited to see if their desperate gamble would succeed or if they would pay the ultimate price for their defiance. The galaxy was about to witness something that hadn't happened in 1,000 years. The galactic hegemony would either learn a hard lesson about humanity, or humanity would cease to exist. Either way, the outcome would be remembered for millennia to come. Commander Zethkar returned to the command center with his mind made up. The authorization from Supreme Counselor Vex Tharn gave him the option to retreat, but his military pride demanded one final attempt at victory. The galactic hegemony had never been defeated by a primitive species, and he would not be the first commander to change that record. "Status report," he commanded, as he took his position. Science Officer Pelnath looked up from her console with concern. "Sir, quantum instability has increased another 15%. We estimate shield failure in less than 4 hours. Several outer ships are already reporting minor system fluctuations." Zethkar studied the tactical display. The quantum cascade was like an invisible storm surrounding his fleet, growing stronger with each passing minute. The humans had created a weapon that was as dangerous to them as it was to their enemies. It was a level of dedication to freedom that defied all logical analysis. Tactical. "Do we have targeting solutions for the quantum field generators?" Tactical Officer Krendar worked at his controls for several moments before responding. "Sir, we have identified 17 probable locations based on energy emissions. However, most are hidden beneath major population centers. Destroying them would require bombardment of civilian areas. Estimated civilian casualties? Between 2 and 300 million humans, sir." The number hung in the air like a weight. In previous conquests, Zethkar had ordered bombardments that resulted in military casualties. But deliberately targeting civilians was against hegemony military doctrine. It was also unnecessary when most species surrendered before resistance reached this level. Sir, interrupted communications specialist Mordoon, we're receiving another transmission from Earth. Put it through. This time, the transmission showed Dr. Webb again, but now he was standing in what appeared to be a massive underground facility. Behind him, enormous machines hummed with barely contained energy. Dozens of human technicians worked at control stations, monitoring readings that appeared to be increasing by the moment. Commander Zethkar, Dr. Webb said, I wanted you to see what we've built here. This is Installation Alpha, one of 17 quantum field generators we've constructed around Earth. Each one is powered by our most advanced fusion reactors and controlled by quantum computers that we built specifically for this purpose. The camera moved to show the scale of the installation. It was enormous, clearly representing years of secret construction and massive resource investment. The humans had been preparing for this confrontation far longer than anyone had realized. Commander, Dr. Webb continued, we know you're considering targeting our installations. We want you to understand what that choice would mean. General Martinez appeared alongside Dr. Webb. Commander, we've positioned our quantum generators beneath our largest population centers deliberately. We wanted to ensure that destroying them would require you to kill hundreds of millions of innocent people. We're betting that your military code of honor will make that choice difficult for you. Zethkar felt a cold realization wash over him. The humans had planned this entire scenario with ruthless precision. They had created a situation where victory would require genocide, a level of violence that would haunt any civilized military commander. You're using your own civilians as shields, he said with disgust. Secretary General Chen joined the transmission. No, Commander. Our civilians volunteered to be shields. When we explained the plan to our population, millions of people requested to live near the installations. They understand the stakes. They chose to put themselves at risk to protect human freedom. Dr. Webb gestured to his technicians. Commander, we're going to increase quantum field intensity one more time. This will bring your fleet to the edge of shield failure. After that, you'll have approximately 1 hour to make your final decision. The transmission ended as alarms throughout the hegemony fleet reached a crescendo. Reports flooded in from ships across the formation as quantum barriers fluctuated wildly. Several vessels reported complete system failures in non-essential areas. Sir, called Science Officer Pelnath urgently. Quantum cascade is accelerating beyond predicted parameters. The humans have found a way to create a feedback loop. At current rate of increase, we'll lose all shield protection in 57 minutes. Zethkar gripped the arms of his command chair. 57 minutes to choose between genocide and retreat. 57 minutes to decide whether the galactic hegemony would maintain its perfect record of conquest or suffer its first defeat at the hands of a species that could barely leave their own solar system. Options, he barked to his staff. Navigation Officer Yil Nara responded first. Sir, we can retreat to minimum safe distance and maintain bombardment capability. Quantum effects should diminish beyond Earth's moon. Negative, interrupted Science Officer Pelnath. The cascade has become self-sustaining. Even if we retreat, the quantum instability will continue expanding. We would be forced to flee this entire star system. Tactical Officer Krendar added his analysis. Sir, we could launch a full-scale assault on all 17 installations simultaneously. Concentrated plasma bombardment would destroy them before the cascade reaches critical levels. Civilian casualties? Zethkar asked. Conservative estimate, 400 million dead, another 100 million injured. Most of Earth's major cities would be severely damaged. The numbers were staggering. In the entire history of hegemony expansion, total military casualties from all conquests combined were less than the civilian death toll this single bombardment would create. The humans had successfully created a situation where victory would require atrocities. Sir, said communications specialist Mordun quietly, we're receiving a personal message for you from Earth. It's from Secretary General Chen. Put it through. Chen appeared on a private channel to Zethkar's personal display. She was alone this time, sitting in what looked like a simple office. Behind her, Windows showed a view of a city where millions of humans continued their daily lives despite the alien fleet hanging overhead. "Commander," she said softly, "I wanted to speak to you personally, soldier to soldier. I know you're facing an impossible decision. I want you to understand why we've put you in this position." Zethkar found himself leaning forward to listen. Something in her voice suggested she understood the weight of command, the burden of making decisions that would cost lives. "Commander, my grandfather fought in the last global war our species waged against itself. He told me stories about facing enemies who seemed overwhelmingly powerful, who offered surrender terms that seemed reasonable. He said the hardest lesson he learned was that sometimes fighting for the right cause means accepting terrible costs." Chen stood and walked to her window, looking out at the city below. "We know that resisting you will cost millions of lives. We know that you could destroy our civilization completely if you chose to do so. But we also know that surrendering would mean the end of human independence forever." She turned back to face the camera. "Commander, we've studied your empire. We know how you treat conquered species. You provide security, prosperity, even a voice in galactic affairs. But you never give back independence once it's surrendered. Once a species becomes part of the hegemony, they remain part of the hegemony forever." Zethkar realized he had never considered that perspective. From the hegemony's viewpoint, membership was a gift that provided protection and prosperity. From the human perspective, it was permanent loss of self-determination. "We've made our choice," Chen continued. "We'd rather die as a free species than live as a prosperous slave race. That may seem irrational to you, but it's who we are as humans." The transmission paused as Chen received a message from someone off-screen. Her expression became more urgent when she returned her attention to the camera. "Commander, our quantum field generators are approaching critical levels. In approximately 30 minutes, the cascade will become irreversible. After that point, both our civilizations will pay the price for this confrontation." "What are you asking of me?" Zethkar said. "I'm asking you to make the choice that will let both our species survive this encounter. Withdraw your fleet and report to your superiors that Earth is not worth the cost of conquest. Find easier targets among species that haven't prepared for your arrival." Chen leaned toward the camera. "Commander, we know about the ancient warnings regarding humanity. Perhaps it's time someone finally listened to that advice." The transmission ended, leaving Zethkar alone with his thoughts and the sounds of continuing alarms. Around him, his officers waited for orders that would determine the fate of two civilizations. "Commander," called Science Officer Pelnath, "Quantum Cascade will reach point of no return in 28 minutes. Zethkar closed his eyes and thought about the path that had led him to this moment. 1,000 years of hegemony expansion had never produced a situation like this. No species had ever been willing to destroy their own world rather than surrender. No enemy had ever created a weapon that was as dangerous to themselves as it was to their opponents. The ancient warning suddenly made sense. The threat wasn't human technology or military capability. The threat was human psychology, their willingness to pay any price for freedom, their refusal to accept domination regardless of circumstances. It was a mindset that made them fundamentally unconquerable. "Open fleet communication channels," he commanded. "All ships, prepare for immediate withdrawal from this star system." Shocked silence filled the command center. Navigation. Officer Yilnara was the first to speak. "Sir, are you ordering a retreat?" "I am ordering a strategic withdrawal in accordance with ancient warnings and Supreme Council authorization," Zethkar replied firmly. "Prepare hyperspace jump coordinates for immediate departure." "Sir," protested Tactical Officer Krendar, "we can still achieve victory. The bombardment would succeed." Zethkar turned to face his tactical officer. "Krendar, victory that requires the massacre of hundreds of millions of civilians is not victory, it's genocide. The hegemony does not conquer through atrocities." He stood and walked to the main display showing Earth. "Furthermore, the humans have demonstrated something that our intelligence failed to identify. They have created a defensive strategy that makes conquest impossible regardless of our technological superiority. They have weaponized their own willingness to die for freedom. Communications. Specialist Mordun looked up from his station. Sir, shall I inform Earth of our withdrawal? Yes. Tell them that the galactic hegemony recognizes their determination to remain independent. Inform them that Earth will be designated as a non-interference zone in our territorial maps. As the fleet began preparations for departure, Zethkar opened one final communication channel to Earth. Secretary General Chen appeared on screen, looking exhausted but hopeful. Secretary General Chen, he said formally. The Galactic Hegemony Fleet is withdrawing from your star system. Earth will be marked as an independent world in our territorial database. We will not return. Relief flooded Chen's face, but she maintained her composure. Thank you, Commander. On behalf of humanity, I want you to know that we respect the courage it took to make this decision. Zethkar nodded slowly. Secretary General, I want you to understand something. What you accomplished here today was not just victory over the hegemony. You proved that the ancient warnings about humanity were accurate. You've demonstrated capabilities that our civilization could never measure or predict. What do you mean? You created a weapon out of your willingness to sacrifice everything for freedom. You made conquest impossible not through superior technology, but through superior determination. That is something the hegemony has never encountered before. Chen smiled for the first time since the crisis began. Commander, freedom isn't something you can measure with sensors or defeat with weapons. It's something that lives in the hearts of people who refuse to give up their right to govern themselves. The transmission ended as the hegemony fleet completed its withdrawal preparations. One by one, the massive warships activated their hyperspace drives and disappeared into the void. Within minutes, Earth's sky was clear of alien vessels for the first time in days. On Earth's surface, quantum field generators began powering down as human technicians carefully reversed the process that had brought two civilizations to the brink of mutual destruction. The cascade effect gradually diminished until space around Earth returned to normal. In cities around the world, billions of humans emerged from shelters and underground facilities to celebrate the most unlikely military victory in their species' history. They had faced an enemy with technology thousands of years more advanced than their own, and achieved victory not through superior weapons, but through superior will. Years later, the story of humanity's confrontation with the galactic hegemony would spread throughout the galaxy. Other civilizations would learn that there was one species that had successfully resisted the most powerful empire in known space. The ancient warnings about humanity would be remembered not as mythology, but as accurate assessments of a species that valued freedom more than life itself. Commander Zethkar returned to the hegemony capital world to face questioning from the Supreme Council. His report would fundamentally change how the empire approached expansion and conquest. For the first time in 1,000 years, they had encountered an opponent that could not be defeated through conventional means. The ancients' warnings had finally been heeded, but only after the galaxy learned why those warnings existed in the first place. Humanity had proven that some opponents are best left unconquered, not because they cannot be defeated, but because the cost of victory exceeds any possible benefit. In the end, the most dangerous weapon humanity possessed was not their hastily built quantum field generators or their willingness to die for freedom. Their most dangerous weapon was their refusal to accept that any fight was impossible to win, no matter how overwhelming the odds appeared to be. The galaxy had learned what the ancients tried to warn them about. Never underestimate a species that considers freedom more valuable than survival itself.